back and forth. Welcome to another edition of the Tactical Empire. We're here with Sean again. What's up, man? How are you?
My man, I'm good. I always look forward to these recordings, and I feel like every time we record this episode, we could lead with what's happened in our real estate life over the past 7 days. It's pretty wild. I show up at my commercial building today, and the positive is a tenant hands me a 5-figure check for a couple months of rent so they can get the write-off at the end of the year. And then I'm also having to call the police because we have a homeless guy camping out in the stairwell over the weekend. So, the pros and cons of getting handed the money and what you deal with to be able to accept it.
Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster. That is for sure.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's that time of year. It's cold up here. Come in my building, warm up, but don't live here and don't do any of your extracurricular activities in my stairwell, and everything will be fine. I won't have to call the cops on you. So, but man, it's a part of the game. But you just had a nice little 24-hour date with the wife.
Yeah, we did. It was a little bit impromptu, but a little bit planned, I guess. My mom is in town like Tuesday to Tuesday for Thanksgiving. We usually do annual planning right on the back of Thanksgiving. And this year, my wife and I kind of talked about it. My mom was like, go ahead and take a trip, whatever, after Thanksgiving. And so we discussed it, and we just really were like, well, annual planning is not really like the season that we're in yet. Just because we've got everything we're doing for selling the house, getting on the road for the RV and doing all that stuff. So we kind of pushed it, and we're going to do it late January instead. So we've already got the trip planned. But that said, I was like, fuck, we're not wasting an opportunity to have grandma in town. Like, the 4 kids are at the house. So it's a super easy, seamless deal. So I got online and just booked us a trip to the Post Oak Hotel, which is Tillman Fertitta's hotel. He built in the Galleria of Houston. He's like one of our richest guys in Houston. He's a billionaire real estate investor. He owns Landry's and all the Landry's restaurants associated with those. So we had not been there, but we had watched the $1 Billion Buyer, I think is the show that was the reality TV show of the building of that hotel and everything that went into it. So it's kind of like Marcus Lemonis's Profit meets like Shark Tank type thing. Sure. And they'd come in and they'd pitch him all the artwork or pitch him the fucking floral arrangements for using in this hotel. And the process that all the decision-making process that went into it was pretty interesting for the show. So, but we had not been to the hotel. It's been open probably 2 years. It's the only 5-star hotel we have in Houston. But Kirsten and I don't usually stay in Houston when we go places, obviously. So like this was a little unusual for us, but we booked a night there, man. It was fucking tremendous. Like it was out of this world. The experience was great. The fucking staff was insane. The attention to detail was super crazy. As I walked around Sunday morning, I kind of like did my thing and did my writing and reading and all my junk. Kirsten slept and I walked around the lobby. But one of the things that was interesting that I wanted to share with you was, man, it was such a thought exercise to expand your train of thinking. Like, because Tillman Fertitta was actually there Saturday night. He was in the lobby doing a Santa Claus came to the lobby and then the lighting of the giant Christmas tree. And so he was there the night before. And it just got me thinking on Sunday that like fucking the way that guy has to think. Like I was walking around the hallways of this thing and I'm like, man, I own a bunch of real estate and I walk around it. And sometimes I feel like a little sense of pride, like, man, this is all mine. And like I'm sure you do in your commercial building. Like you sit back sometimes and you're like, fuck, man, I did a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
And then I was standing in this fucking like these grand hallways, right? With hundreds of fucking, I mean, the Christmas decorations alone were fucking $10 million in the hallway I'm standing in. And I'm like, that guy walks in here and he had the wherewithal and the expansive mind to be like, I'm going to build this thing and it's going to be mine. And like to walk in there and like have your wife on your arm and be like, this is ours. And it be that where like the doors cost fucking $1 million. Like
Yeah.
it's just such next level expansive thought that like I was trying to wrap my head around it yesterday morning. And like, who do I have to become to think that way? Where you look at something like that and you're like, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
And this is what it takes. Boom, boom, boom. I think I'm pretty good at like strategizing that type of stuff and can expand pretty far. But like that guy's like obviously worlds ahead of me. But
It's interesting. Go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
no. It was just a fantastic trip. The attention to detail and the service was amazing. And he has a monster staff, and to a man, they were amazing. I mean, the conversations were mostly about business between Kirsten and I, because I'm like, in one like segment of life, I'm being told all the time that no one can find anybody to work, and then we're in this amazingly expensive, amazingly like high touch service location, and there's thousands of people working, and they're all A players. They're all top notch. Like there wasn't one bad experience. There wasn't one time that they didn't over deliver when they didn't even need to. Because I'm just walking around there minding my own business, and they're like, "How can I help you?" Following me around, like giving me like more
Take
than
these
I
free
need.
tickets to the show downtown.
Exactly. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, man. Go ahead. What do you got?
No, you're fine, man. It's interesting because we talk about investing in real estate and almost come at it from a, I think I try and add in a little bit of the emotion when it comes to the short-term rentals that I want to buy. But I think there's this misconception that high income earners, wealthy entrepreneurs, business owners, real estate moguls, that they're unemotional to the things that they're building. And I would argue that they're not. Like you said, walking through and having a sense of pride is not just a sense of pride of what they quote they created or what they own. They're looking at the people that work within that system, and they fully understand that they're providing a sense of income or a source of income to those families, and those families are going to go and buy Christmas presents for their children. And that's at all different levels of the chain of that hotel. And for me, I hire a husband and wife couple for my 2 short-term rentals that are local, and that is their sole source of income. So I take high pride in what I pay them, and I don't just pay them a cleaning fee. They actually have skin in the game when it comes to a percentage of every single dollar that flows in there. And they go above and beyond because they have a sense of ownership in the entities. And like, as simple as getting a message from a client, a guest at our Airbnbs that are like, oh my goodness, the design here is amazing, which my wife did 80% of the design work on that third property that we bought. And like that feels really good to know that people are bringing their kids into our properties, and it's not just a place to sleep. That's why I don't get involved in this argument on the cost of staying in an Airbnb versus the cost of staying in a hotel. Now, your hotel was an experience, but just your normal Holiday Inn Express down the road in Boone, North Carolina, they can't compete with my luxury spa cabin. And so the price point is not going to be anywhere near the same. Sure. You're not paying for a bed. You're paying for the experience with your family that you're having in there. But one of the best books that I read for client satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and just winning and excellence was Horst Schultz's Excellence Wins. He was the founder, creator of the Ritz-Carlton. Okay. And the Ritz-Carlton is, besides some of the other, I've stayed in a couple, Hotel Zaza in Dallas was really, really nice. But, the Ritz-Carlton in DC, me and my wife stayed there one weekend for our anniversary. And that was my first experience with, and it was after I read this book. So I was able to like look for some of the things he talks about in that book. But you're right. Like the smells when you walk into the room, the artwork, it's not cookie cutter, the carpet, the colors, the people that work there. We wanted to get tickets to this show in DC, and they literally pulled open a drawer and handed us 2 tickets to go for free. And it was really, really cool. So I'm glad that you guys did that. But I know we're circling back to annual planning and what it takes to plan out a year with your spouse. So couples annual planning, you guys probably talked a little bit about it during this 24-hour period, but you have it planned for the end of January. Me and my wife are going to our Blowing Rock, North Carolina luxury spa cabin Airbnb for 5 days in December. The kids will be with us, but we'll distract them with something as we, have a glass of wine and talk about what we want the next year to be. But where do people start if this is their first time going through an annual planning exercise?
Oh man, that's a good question. That is such a good question because we introduce it to our guys in the group because I think it's such a game changer. Because it's been so impactful to my life and my relationship and my progress. And really, it depends on where you guys are at on the personal development scale. Because usually one person is further ahead than the other person when you first try to like broach this topic or bring it up and you're like, hey, to your wife, you're like, let's go do annual planning as a couple for our family and our businesses and our life. And the one person is usually like, like sounds great. Whatever. And so I will say that there is a learning curve to it. Each time gets better. Each time gets more kind of sophisticated and more efficient. And so you really just start where you're at. Like, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't have 5 days to go. Because our vision for it eventually is that we're doing like luxury vacations to do our annual planning. What season are we in with life? We're in a season of life where we've got 4 kids under 11 years old. So like the reality of getting away for something like that is not really on the table right now. So we got to take what we can get. And most of the people that like are in our group, they're in that kind of season of life. They got to take what they can get. And so an overnight is fine. I've even coached a guy last year who did a like Sunday brunch with his wife and it lasted like 4 hours and they were able to go ahead and plan. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this big dramatic thing if that's too stressful. Cause I mean, I'm all about like eliminating all the friction, right? And like if it is too stressful or anxiety inducing, you're not going to get the results out of it that you're looking to get out of it. So whatever works for you, whatever budget that may be, whatever time frame that may be, and then what we do, I mean, you really have to just. I'll leave it there because I want to answer that question and not go too far, but. To introduce it, you just want to say, hey, like I want us to have the best year ever. And like, I think we should go ahead and deliberately plan together on where we're going. And that's kind of how it starts. And beyond that, like what would be your next question?
Yeah, so it's like step one is recognize where you're at today in terms of the time allotted and who may be the one that's pushing for the planning. And so recognize that it may not be easy, but I think me and my wife so far we've been doing this 3 years if you count the year I did it by myself.
Yeah.
but 2 to 3 years, and we've only done it under over an extended lunch. I try and get her. This may be the next part of your question is what can we do leading up to that day? So for me, it was, I want my wife thinking about it a little bit before the lunch, just so we can streamline that process. So the questionnaire template that we use in the inner circle, I send that to her ahead of time. Like, hey, if you have some time, just start jotting down some ideas. And then I spend time jotting down my ideas. And then the lunch for us has been the moment where we really speak to one another on what we jotted down, what's connecting, what's disconnected, and then try and fill in the gaps. And then we have that as our annual planning foundation. Obviously, this year it's going to be maybe a little bit more extensive with us actually going away. Like I said, the kids are going to be with us, so it may be broken up there. But so for us, it's establish the time, establish the day, and maybe get the template, the questionnaires, or the time. Like if you don't have a template or questionnaire, then maybe help the people here, Jeff, on thinking of some of the main criteria or areas of their life that they are going to want to start jotting some thoughts down.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to step through it is like you do reflections first. Like, okay, we're here in 2023. Where were we 12 months ago? And just start like brain dumping everything you can think of that you've done over the last year. And whether it's financial, whether it's family related, like are the kids in new activities, we've bought X, Y, and Z, what businesses are working, what's happened that was good, maybe bad stuff, even like we've overcome X, Y, and Z throughout the year. Those are all great items to reflect upon before you go into the next thing. And so what we start with is reflection into a vision exercise, like where are we going to be in 1,000 days? Like you do that vision exercise and you get granular on where you're going to be 3 years from now, 1,000 days from now, whatever. We use both as metrics, but then you kind of list all the details of that. Where will we live? What are we doing? How do we make our money? How are we spend our days? Who do we spend our days with? Like, what are our passions? What are our hobbies? Blah, blah, blah. That all goes into your vision exercise. And then from there, you break it down further into like, okay, to achieve that vision in 3 years, where will I need to be 1 year from now? And then you start pulling that stuff down to your 1 year goals. But you need to talk and share that amongst a couple, because that's where the kind of aha moments come in. It is like my wife will do a vision and then I'll do a vision separately, and then we'll come together and we share them with each other. And what you'll find is like there's kind of reading between the lines situations. Like I want this, and then it opens up discussion amongst couples for like, hey, I recognize that you said you want this. Like, I never knew that. Or why don't we do that right now type thing. There's some aha moments, and it just really increases the communication and the support system by doing it that way. So if you pull it down and then you've got your 1 year goals on what you want to accomplish, we also do like we do a deep dive on our kids. Like, what did they do in the last year? And we homeschool. So like, this is our parent teacher conference, if you will, an annual deep dive on the kids. What went well? What activities were they in? What are they aspiring to do? How have they grown over the last year? Stuff like that it all comes out in this annual planning. And then like, what do I specifically want? And what does my wife specifically want? What does she want to pick up as far as hobbies and activities? And then we support each other on how we make space and accommodate those things. But the real difference is it really just galvanizes you guys working as a team to accomplish these goals, as opposed to the game changer for us was we weren't operating in silos anymore. Like, I'm sure you probably experienced this, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but your wife has a career at work, right? So like there's a big barrier there. Is like she's over there hard charging at her career, and you probably don't stay very in tune with that unless you're very proactive about like extracting that information. At least that's how I was in the corporate world. I was just over there doing shit, and I didn't want to talk about it when I got home.
That's right.
So it kind of just creates this veil of like lack of communication, and you're doing something else, which is like, to her probably looks like fucking nothing. You're like retired, kind of doing stuff, never getting dressed. And and so it really brings you together as a couple to kind of re-engage that like, hey, we're on this mission together. We do have a shared set of like goals and objectives and mission that we're on to achieve this overall vision together, as opposed to like, I'm going this direction, you're going this direction. We'll compare spreadsheets at the end of the year.
And hoping that you're ahead than you were 12 months later. So this is guys, the annual planning, especially for couples, is a more proactive approach to say that you're actually in control of more areas in your life than you may have thought in the past. And I actually think that proves the point on how usually it's only one spouse that's coming to that with the gung ho, like let's do this, and not to what's the word I'm looking for? Not to say it's a particular type of person, but it's usually the entrepreneurial minded person. Whereas in my case, I was in masterminds. I'm surrounded by people that are, quote, doing their own thing. And yes, my wife works for, a multiple billion-dollar company, global brand. And so there is a barrier in my mind, because they do personal development, but guess what it's focused on? It's focused on that particular business in that particular product category, focused on that particular avatar. Yep. And there's a hard wall between the point of that personal development benefiting the business, the global multi-billion-dollar business, versus the individual employee and their life outside of that business. And so the point that you made there on like how there's a lot more connections in you and your spouse's life outside of that, quote, work, whether it's entrepreneurial work or W-2 employee work. taking that step back and maybe, looking at family fitness, finances, and what the future freedom looks like for you and your spouse actually take back the control. It's like, okay, if I'm going to, and let's say my wife loves her job and loves her company, if I'm going to continue down this pathway, I want to progress in this area of my life to serve this company that has benefited us immensely with the benefits and the income and the vehicle that they give us and whatever else that she gets. But to what end? What should that serve us for outside of it? In business, we say the difference between working in your business and working on your business. Your business should serve you, not you serve your business. Well, same thing with your job. So that employment should benefit you outside your work. What do you want it to be? What do you want to be back in control of? Is it giving you the time to work out and be healthy? Is it giving you the time to afford a babysitter so you and your spouse can go on a date night? Or are you doing late night calls? Are you at the whim of the clients, whatever, real estate agents? Let's say they're at the whim of someone texting them at 8:00, the new listing that just hit the market, and they want to see it tomorrow at 6 a.m. because they want to be the first ones in the house. Like, I know there's parts of your life that you may not be able to control, but when you start actually putting some guardrails up and some barriers up, to take a step back, let me slow down a second. The way that I like to do it is I like to start macroeconomics first. Like, hey, what is the theme for this year, and what were our core values, and are the core values holding true? Are we living by these core values? Is there anything that we feel like we want to change or add? We don't want to get too many core values into our vision. And then we start looking at the areas: family, fitness, finances, freedom. We reassess last year. What changes do we want to make this year? And then we get granular on the strategies and actions that we want to take. So that's going from big picture to small picture, macro to micro. And so that's kind of how we've worked through it. But I have my Vivid Vision sitting here next to me. And one thing that I have to do throughout the year is this is not a one-time exercise and then you forget about it. So my Vivid Visions, for those of you that are watching the video on YouTube, I have a template. So here's a personal one, here's a family one. And they're on my office desk. So I basically have my eyes on them every single day. And when I have a couple extra minutes or I feel like I'm straying, I go back through and I reread basically every week or two the thoughts that I had leading into this year to keep me on track. So maybe one exercise that people can do, I know you like this one, Jeff, is the start, stop, keep exercise. Can you explain that to people?
Stop, start, continue. You just evaluate. I do it on smaller scales, like monthly or quarterly, is like, because I'm big on, let's add in quantitative things that you can track. So we're big on habits, right? Like, what habits support the lifestyle that you want? But you can't start 10 new things in a month because it's too overwhelming. And so one simple idea or goal you may have for the year is, I'm going to pick up one habit a month, and then you try it for 30 days. And then you look back on whether that is serving you or whether it's, like I said, is it creating anxiety? Is it creating stress? I try to do things periodically and I say I'm going to do them, and then I follow through because I said what I was going to do. But then I give myself enough grace to look back and say, is this something that I should continue to do? Or fuck no, it's creating way too much stress and headaches because I am trying to get up, whatever, at 2:00 in the morning or something crazy, right? And so the stop, start, continue exercise is like just evaluating what you're doing. What is something you should stop doing that you're currently doing? What is something you should start doing that you're currently not doing? And then what is something that you've picked up that you know that is serving you on a high level that you want to continue doing? And just identifying those things periodically, like, okay, I'm eating too much sugar, I should stop doing that. Or I'm eating too late at night, stop doing that. And then you're consciously thinking about that. And then what do I want to start? I want to start a step challenge. I'm going to do 15,000 steps a day or something. You start doing that. And then that's a prime example of something that may cause you too much stress or headaches. Because if you've gotten out there and you're walking at 10:00 at night and it's disrupting your schedule just because you said you were going to do 15,000 steps, that may be something to reevaluate. Right. So
it's a good habit, Jeff. I can't remove it from my schedule. I promised it to myself. Right. Like, no, y'all, you have freedom and control. You have to reassess, like Jeff said, every 30 to 90 days, you have to reassess what's serving you. And it doesn't have to be black or white, all or nothing. Right.
Yeah.
12,000 steps, 15,000 steps, 10,000
Yep.
steps, just get it in. But maybe, Jeff, off the top of your head, putting you on the spot here, can you think back to the past year on maybe, and I don't care which one you answer, can you think of anything that you added, removed, or continue to do that did serve you well throughout the year? Or maybe the opposite, maybe something you added in that you actually had to change on the back end, whatever comes to mind first.
Well, I did start working out twice a day. And so I have messed with that. I have been loose in my parameters, but my tracking's been spot on. I haven't missed anything. I try to work out once a day for 45 minutes. So I've been messing around with what a workout is, right? And usually I get in my head too much because like I'll challenge myself that I need to lift weights for an hour and 15 minutes or something, whatever the fuck that means. And I have a tendency to get really like obsessive about this stuff, like I have that personality where like I'm very obsessive. I'm very like addictive oriented. Like, so I have to channel that in a good way. And so like, I will challenge myself to these absurd challenges and I will have to follow through until I reevaluate and like make space for myself to be like, chill, dude, that's not serving you. And so I do that in good and bad ways, right? Like, and so for me, this is a really powerful exercise because I can say, hey, man, you're drinking too many days a week. Okay, boom. Like that's one that you and I have talked about that I've been working on this year. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have my best year ever. I'm going to have the most alcohol-free days that I've had in whatever, 10, 15 years this year, right? And I did it. And I have. And so like, it's just conscious effort of like, what does that mean? Does that mean cold turkey? I'm never drinking? No, like, because there's people online every day declaring that, right? I'm not going to drink for the next year. I've toyed with saying that. And I'm like, no, if I say it, then I'll do it. And why would I do that? And so like, it's funny, the little verbal judo I've got going on in my head or mental judo about it. But like, that's one, I did the 250-mile challenge on rucking. That's what I added. Will I continue that? No, not after the first of the year, just because now it's created stress because I've fallen too far behind. But now I have to do like 3.5 miles a day or some shit to finish before the end of the year. And
it's 55 degrees in Texas. So, Jeff doesn't want to get cold exposure and right. Frostbite on his fingers.
That's serious stuff, man. Gangrene. Like it's real. But stuff like that, like I will follow through and finish that. But after the first of the year, that will be something that I stop doing. So where I'm kind of in my sweet spot is like, I do like the 2 workouts a day that are not stressed. One's cardio related. One is weightlifting related. They're usually like 45 minutes of a baseline because I do want to know what qualifies for like checking the box. It can't be like 15 minutes. I walked around the block because like that could be anything, right? So that's the difficult thing is like you have to actually put in a data point so it's a yes or a no. And so those are a couple things. I don't know what else I've added this year or removed. I mean, my streaks have been my streaks are my habits, guys. I just keep it on an app called Streaks, but they have been an ever evolving list of 12 daily items over the past 5 or 6 years. And the only thing that's changing now at this point is maybe 2 of those kind of flip-flop. Everything else is really like, it is serving me on a very high level. So I would say like 8 or 9 of those are done every day and they'll be done for eternity because there's no reason to drop them. So I'm at the really fine tuning of tweaking. If you're just starting this, take on 4 things, add them to your diet. I mean, I've drank a gallon of water for fucking like every single day this year, except maybe 2 days. And I could tell you if I looked at my streaks right now, like I know all this stuff to a actual like exact number. So that's important too, tracking to see what affects you. But going back to the annual planning thing, this is an opportunity to open up conversations like and communicate with your spouse on like, I want to take on something else. because then they can support you. Because usually when miscommunications in marriages come up, it's like I run out the door trying to do something. She's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And like, I don't come home for 3 days, and I'm like, "I'm training for an Ironman." And she's like, "Oh, what the fuck? Like, should we have discussed that first? Like, you're going to be training 6 hours a day for the next 6 months, and like, we probably should have put that like in annual planning to talk about, right? Because I need a support system to support me in doing that, because I have all these other things that I have to take care of." And so like, I feel like that's super good. And it's been great for our marriage, because she brings me things that like she wants to do. And then I can be like, "Oh, I'll take the kids to school," or I'll take the kids on Tuesdays so you can do this. And like,
Yeah,
never before in history would I just like be
that's
like,
right.
because I don't know. And women have a tendency to be pseudo martyrs. Like, they just are quiet about things. They're not going to come to me and be like, "Hey, every Tuesday, could you take 2 hours of lunch to take 4 kids somewhere?"
Mm,
Because she thinks I'm busy. And like, and so for her, it wouldn't be like, it would have never come to mind that she wants that. And it comes up in like these planning sessions that maybe she wants to do that, whatever the fuck it is, right? And
goodness, that's a huge one, Jeff. You mind if I chime in here?
yeah, man, yeah,
That I love that, because the underlying message that I heard there that you didn't say that I want people to hear is it's not easy. Like, it's not about you. Remember, this is a couple's annual planning set. It's
yeah.
not about you. It's about both of you. And there will be negotiations. There will be compromise. And thinking back to the question I asked you about what I added in, for me, it actually came down to, for me personally, it was I needed to stop fully working out at the gym that I own for a
Mhm.
couple of reasons. One, people wanting to interrupt because I own the gym, so they want to talk to me. Two, when I go to my gym, I felt obligated to take my dogs. And when I take my dogs, I play with them. So I don't get a 10-minute warm up in. And then I feel like I'm behind. And anytime I rest, they think I'm done. So they want to play again. But ultimately, it came down to my wife also. What did she want? And a
Mhm.
few things that she wanted this year was one, to actually have a nutrition coach instead of just saying she wanted to change nutrition. So investing actual money into hiring a coach. And she stuck with that coach and she got great results. Two was we were in this rhythm of my wife taking the kids to school and me picking them up. Okay. And then maybe some mornings my wife would need a breakfast with doctors and she would let me know the right before we go to bed or the morning of. And I had to vocalize to her like, "Hey babe, I have my days planned. And when I work out at 8:15, taking the kids bumps it back. Mentally, I don't like that. Like, yeah, time wise, I can do it because she knows I have the freedom and flexibility. But
Right.
but I needed to vocalize to her. I needed more time to hear that. But then as the year went on, and this is where the flexibility within the year came, she told me, she goes, "Hey, could you commit to every Wednesday taking the kids to school so I could plan breakfasts on Wednesday? And Wednesday is my farthest away
Yes.
appointments." And it was like, I don't like that. Like, that's why I said, I
Yeah.
don't like that. But yes, I can compromise that. Yes. And then I guess what? For 3 or 4 weeks, right? You said for 30 days. So 30 days, I would take the kids to school every Wednesday. And then I'd try and go to the gym that I work out at, big global traditional gym, 60,000 square feet, whatever. But it was so late that I was like, man, it's that, like you said, it was causing stress.
Mhm.
So actually the past 2 months, and this is kind of where your 250-mile challenge, which I am not participating in the 250-mile aspect of it. But one thing that I wanted to do was recognize that I didn't have to crush myself all the time and do gym workouts. And so I did take the fact that I watch you and you ruck a lot. I did invest in a heavy duty Go Ruck backpack,
Yeah.
and I started walking on Sundays. But then it clicked in my mind, and I was like, well, why don't Wednesdays, when I drop my kids off in town, I just bring the book bag along, bring the dogs along, because I felt bad being away from them for so long, dropping the kids off, then going to the gym. So now on Wednesdays, I drop the kids off. I have the dogs with me. I strap on the book bag and I either walk downtown, or we have what's called the Shenandoah Valley Museum locally, and they have trails, and just started taking the dogs there.
Yeah.
And, so I'm getting 45 minutes to an hour of rucking in with 35 to 50 pounds. So my interpretation of a workout on that particular day of the week had to change because I compromised with my wife to be able to take the kids to school there. And then the big thing for me this year was going into 2023. I knew that my daughter would be leaving daycare and going to private school. They end about 2 hours earlier than her daycare did. Yes, I have help from my mother-in-law 2 days a week, but I wanted, my theme for the year was be famous in my home.
Mhm.
Well, having my mother-in-law pick up my kid every single day is not being famous in my home. So I had to commit to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And to be frank with you guys listening to this, I was not looking forward to it. I think I might have had a conversation with you, Jeff, too. Is like, I needed to cut my mentorship hours down to make that work. And I was like, I'm not going to enjoy ending my day 2.5 hours early. I'll tell you what, I love it. I love it. So like you have these misconceptions about the things that you may like and may not like. And then you actually start doing them and you freaking enjoy them, or the vice versa. You do the 250-mile challenge and realize that you get behind and it causes stress. So flexibility is huge throughout the year. But one thing I had to do there was I had to Parkinson's law my time even more and compress time. So I went from having an open 6 to 8 hour day. And yeah, I didn't do things back to back. So I was really only working 3 to 5 hours a day going into 2023. But now on the back half of 2023, I've compressed my time down more. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually testing doing a couple things back to back, but on a tighter timeline. So I have a bigger time in the morning for personal habits and my personal time. And then some time with my daughter in the afternoon because I pick her up and then we go downtown, we hang out. Now I started loving picking up my daughter 3 days a week early. And then I was like, well, I'm downtown. My son's daycare is down the road. Why don't I just pick him up? Well, my wife's not getting home till 5. I can't be with the kids 2 extra hours. I was that dad. I was not like the gung-ho dad there in 2021, 2022. But now I freaking love it. So I'm picking my kids up, both of my kids at 3:30, 3 days a week. And we're just having time to ourselves, 2 hours. Some nights if my wife has a dinner with doctors, which is like once a month, we'll have the whole night alone. Freaking loving it. But that's those are the things that I added in. Now looking forward, let's talk to people about looking forward because they might get some ideas from us. 2024, I still want to be famous in my home, but I've taken 2 years to quote, buy back a lot of my time. And now I've compressed my time and I'm in a new, really good rhythm with my time.
Yep.
I think my theme personally, this is not going to be my family's theme, but that's why I have a personal vivid vision and a family vivid vision. Because some of the things I want personally, like my family doesn't have to be involved in them. I just have to recognize what may interfere and what I may need to compromise on throughout the year. My thing for 2024 is like all in on me. I think that's going to be my theme. I'm going to go all in on me and the professionals that are in my personal sphere that support me, that align with me, and that our core values are the same and that we can support one another. And you've kind of seen that on some of the changes that I've done throughout this year is like, I need to go even more all in on me, myself, my values. And that doesn't mean like shun everyone else. It means the people I'm going to be doing business with recognize that. And I recognize that in them. I recognize your value. You recognize my value. And we're going to all move forward together. And if you're not on that level, I'm not going to turn my back on you guys, but it's going to open up new doors for me in 2024. It's just what I think I have to do at this time. But anything stand out there for you, Jeff?
Well, one thing that you talked about is that like you talked about how you and your wife have essentially you have intentionally given yourself more freedom through the communication and the yin and yang, the sacrifice of like, hey, you do this, I'll do this. Most of the time we're reactionary in our lives. And you're talking about the situation that you just described with your wife switching Wednesdays, doing all that. That is such intentionality. That's exactly what we have done with our entire schedule. Like I only do Zoom calls on Wednesdays for a reason. It's so we can travel the rest of the year. It's now led us into, so who knows what doors will open for you guys understanding these principles. All it does is it creates more freedom of time, more freedom of location. And then the money just keeps coming because of the synergies between you two. Like money's the easiest part. Like truly, it really, really is. And I never fucking understood that. I always had it flipped backwards. I was like, get the money, I'll fix all this other shit. And like, that is the absolute wrong way to do it. And I kept bumping on ceilings. I would have setbacks. I would grow. I would have massive setbacks. I would grow, have massive setbacks. And I could never figure out why I was stubbing my toe. And then this type of process opened everything up. And I understood that it was backwards and that I had it completely backwards. And that once I went backwards, fixed the foundation, fixed myself, then fixed my relationship, and started being present in what I was doing, like everything changed. And it's because you're on a different vibrational level when you're comfortable with the foundation of what you've built. And so like there's a lot there, but I just want to say though that the intentionality that you described with regards to your planning is what creates more freedom. And that's what's so beneficial about this planning process, is because the way I am living my life and the way that I suggest people do is you build in your stuff first and then you fill in work all around it. Because there's no work is not in short supply. We're never going to be done with our to-do list. And so when you sit down with Kate and you're like, what are we going to do this year? Here's vacations. Here, like I'm thinking about taking 6 weeks off next year and just blocking the time for like thought time. So every other month, I may take an entire week off, not with plans to go anywhere. We're going to have vacations and stuff other places, but I think that will amplify my creativity and my ability to plan for like where we're going from a vision standpoint. And so like that is one thing I'm tossing around heading into our annual planning on whether I want to schedule that or not. And then the way that I would work it is like, what is important to you? Your workouts are important to you. Your vacations are important to you. And like the work can fill in around it, but then exercising those boundaries as well. Because the boundaries are what led you to enjoying those 2 hours with your kids. Because without boundaries, and I am guilty of this like a motherfucker, like if I'm texting or if I'm finishing sales calls, I can hang out with my kids for hours and it's never fun. It's heightened anxiety. It's like lack of attention. I am not present. Neither of us are having a good experience and I am stressed. And like, so I know what you're talking about when you talk about like, oh, we could just leave our son at daycare for 2 more hours and I could go do X, Y, and Z. But you have to kind of you have to reframe your thought process going into it. Just like you had to change your schedule around on Wednesday mornings to not amplify your anxiety. It's the same exact thing you're doing with your kids, but you have to be intentional about moving it. Like when I try to juggle shit, I'm a mess. It stresses me out. I'm never functioning at a high level. I'm not serving anybody at 100%. And so like, that's where you really have to dial it in, and why I'm so excited for you guys to be doing it already with such young children and everything else. Cause like the thing, they get old so fast and you miss these experiences and every minute matters. Right.
Yeah, man, this is why I love co-hosting a podcast with Jeff, because these are mentor calls for me. He just reinforces a lot of the things that he's taught me over the years, and making sure that I'm staying on the right track and amplifying and moving them up every single year. So you guys heard there at the end, about the guardrails, and what does that look like application wise in your life? For me, y'all, this is people say this, but I think most people don't actually implement it. Getting good at saying the word no to other people, and probably more importantly to yourself over the next year. Some of you may just need to focus on that in the next 90 days. And what does that look like in my life? For me, saying no, what Jeff just hit on at the end there, it was, okay, I'm with my daughter, but this person that's paying me for mentorship just texted asking if I have a few minutes. Do I have a few minutes? Yes. But I already have a commitment and I'm with my daughter. So the answer, like, I don't explain. I'm just like, hey, what's tomorrow look like? Right. Like I'm not rude about it. It's like, yeah, man, with my family, what's tomorrow look like? Is it an emergency? Question mark.
Yep.
99.99% of the time is not an emergency, right? They just have a thought in their head and they need to get it out. So like that, and that's hard to do, man. I've owned businesses. I've owned service-based business. Every income form that I have is service-based business, right? Getting messages from Airbnb guests, gym ownership, mentorship, things like that, man. So some of you take that. That is going to be your thing, is getting good at the word no. I absolutely have enjoyed every single minute of this podcast. If you guys need to listen to it back, maybe put it on 1.5 speed. That's how I listen to podcasts. And Jeff and I talk really quickly, so the 1.5 speed is kind of fun sometimes to listen to our podcast playback. But what questions you guys have? Hit us up. Get into the Tactical Empire community on Facebook, free group. Jeff, anything for the people as we wrap up here?
Yeah, just try this and let us know how it goes. I mean, we have conversations daily with guys about this, and they're like, my wife isn't interested in it or doesn't understand it, blah, blah, blah. I'll tell you what, it opens up opportunities for like, probably 10 years ago, I was in the personal development space. I'd been in there probably 5 years at that point in time. And, but my wife wasn't spending any money on personal development. Okay. She wasn't in any groups that were growing her or stretching her at that time. And it was opportunities like these in annual planning that, like, okay, well, Jeff, I'm not even going to tell you my numbers like I spend this year, but like
Yeah.
when you're like, Jeff, how much did you spend on personal development this year? And then I'm sitting across from Kirsten going, well, Kirsten did nothing. Do you want to do something? Like we have the budget for you to do something. I would encourage anybody, if they're involved in the personal development space and their spouse isn't, they need to encourage their spouse to get involved in something that they're passionate about, or like a coaching relationship or a mentoring relationship or a group that they can be surrounded by that will help them think differently or stretch them and push them to be more accountable to themselves and their growth. And I think that's the most important key with it, because you can't have a relationship where you're not equally yoked. Like if one person is growing and one person is perfect with the status quo, you are eventually going to have that chasm is going to grow too large, and it's going to be you will not be able to bridge that gap at some point if you let it go too far. And ultimately, you guys got together at some point because you believed in each other and enjoyed each other's company and thought you guys were going together to build a life. So you should cheer each other on and expect that you guys should be each other's biggest cheerleaders in the growth process. And it's not always comfortable. It is oftentimes painful. If you're married to my wife, she challenges me and pushes me in ways that make me incredibly uncomfortable because she knows me more than anybody on the planet. And so like that is an uncomfortable thing that most of us avoid. And because it's not all good. It's not all positive feedback and positive reinforcement. And so like you have to understand that goes on as well. But that's part of the growth process. That's not to scare you off. You don't do that year one. Usually she's not like, you're a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. You didn't keep your word, that here. Like that stuff used to go on a little more, but now it doesn't go on at all nearly as much. But now she will challenge me if she thinks I'm not living up to the standard that she foresees in me, because she understands my potential more than I understand my potential, or I'm willing to let in. And so like that becomes a very powerful force when you guys can have those conversations and work together to support each other. So
this is actually something I made a note on earlier when you were talking, and I forgot to bring it up, and it kind of chimes in well with what you said at the end. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking the quote, it must be nice, my response is, one, yes, it is. Two, just because it's nice doesn't mean it's easy, and doesn't mean that it is as good in the past as it is now. The reason why you hear Jeff say that they can do certain things, and you may hear that me and my wife can do certain things, is because we did this. Because we did annual planning I've been only doing it for 3 years. Jeff's have been doing it more, but it was just like he said, it is not easy. It's a challenge, but every year there's going to be a compounding effect, and you guys are going to get better at it. And so I just want you guys to recognize that, right? It is nice, but it's not easy, and it will get better. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to the podcast today. Jeff, I'm going to let you send us out.
Right on, man. Thanks. Yeah, this is the path for growth, guys, because it will change your family's trajectory. And if you have an inkling of leaving a legacy that's like life changing for you and your family, this is the way to do it. Just try it out. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.